Duke Sebastian Vale struck the silver bell once and ordered the guards to remove his wife's deaf sister from the ballroom. "She has mocked an envoy of the crown," he announced, while more than 100 guests watched Eliza Bell struggle to explain herself with frantic hands. "Take her away." Duchess Clara Vale stepped between the guards and the 18-year-old girl she had raised since their mother's death. "You have misunderstood her. I saw enough." "No, Sebastian. You saw her hands move and decided that made her guilty." A murmur passed beneath the chandeliers of Ravenscourt Hall. At the center of the room stood Sir Edmund Caro, the royal envoy Eliza had supposedly insulted. His smile appeared tolerant, almost compassionate, but Clara noticed how tightly he gripped the head of his walking stick. Beside him stood a gloved stranger, dressed in black. Eliza pointed toward that man, then touched 2 fingers to her own eyes. She crossed both hands at the wrists, before forming a rapid sequence Clara knew perfectly. "He threatened someone. I saw him." Sebastian caught Eliza's wrist before she could finish. "Enough." Clara stared at her husband's hand around her sister's slender arm. 6 years earlier, those same fingers had traced promises against Clara's palm during their courtship. He had once asked her to teach him Eliza's language. He had learned only a dozen signs before politics, pride, and impatience became more important. Now, he used his ignorance as proof against her. "Release her," Clara said. Sebastian did, but only after every guest had seen the warning in his face. Lady Helena Marwood approached him in a gown the color of dark wine. The widowed daughter of a cabinet minister had spent the past month advising Sebastian on his hopes of obtaining a government appointment. She leaned close enough for her jeweled shoulder to touch his sleeve. "Your Grace," Helena murmured, "perhaps the girl should be questioned somewhere quieter, for her own dignity." Clara saw Eliza recoil. "She will not be questioned without me." Sebastian's expression hardened. "This is no longer a family matter. Sir Edmund represents the crown, and Eliza cannot hear his accusation or answer it in words. If you remove me, she has no voice here. Then send her away from Ravenscourt tonight, quietly. I will tell our guests she was ill." Clara searched his face for some trace of the man who had once welcomed Eliza into his home. She found only embarrassment, the cold resentment of a duke whose perfect political evening had been disturbed by a girl he considered inconvenient. "You know she has nowhere else to go." "That is not my concern." Eliza could not hear the words, but she read them on his lips. The fear vanished from her face. What replaced it wounded Clara more deeply: recognition. Eliza had finally understood that Sebastian's kindness had always depended upon her remaining silent and unseen. Clara raised her hands. "You will not go alone." Eliza shook her head violently. Sebastian stepped closer. "Do not make a spectacle of this. You made it a spectacle when you called her guilty before the entire county. I am offering you a choice, Clara. No. You are demanding that I sacrifice my sister to protect your ambition." His jaw tightened. "If you follow her, you surrender your authority in this house." The ballroom became utterly still. Clara removed the ring of household keys from her waist. She laid them on the musician's table one by one: the linen room key, the medicine cupboard, the tenant office, the grain store, and finally the great brass key to Ravenscourt itself. For 6 years she had managed the estate, while Sebastian spent each parliamentary season in London. She knew which tenant's roof leaked, which widow required coal, which fields would fail after another wet spring. Yet he dismissed that labor with a single sentence, because he expected her love to make her obedient. "You may take my keys," Clara said. "You will not take my conscience." Sebastian's face paled, but he did not withdraw the order. The guards escorted Clara and Eliza toward the doors. As they passed Sir Edmund, Eliza suddenly stopped, her gaze fixed not upon the envoy, but upon the black-gloved man behind him. The stranger adjusted his cuff. 3 fingers brushed his wrist. His thumb crossed his palm. His hand closed once. Eliza went rigid. One guard pushed her forward, and her ivory fan slipped from her grasp. It struck the marble and broke beneath his boot. Clara knelt to gather the splintered pieces. Eliza touched her shoulder, urgently repeating the gestures she had seen. Door, carriage, blood. Clara looked back. The gloved man had disappeared. Sir Edmund returned to his conversation as if nothing had happened. Lady Helena bent to collect the household keys Clara had surrendered, wearing an expression of solemn concern. Sebastian stood beside her and watched his wife leave without calling her back. Only after the ballroom doors closed did Eliza reveal the final sign: tomorrow. Their trunks were brought down less than an hour later. No maid was permitted to help them. Clara packed 2 gowns, Eliza's slate, their mother's miniature, and what little money remained in her private drawer. Sebastian had already ordered the steward to suspend her household allowance. When Clara lifted Eliza's damaged fan from the bed, one ivory rib came loose. A narrow strip of paper had been folded inside it. Clara opened the note and found a precise drawing of the seating arrangement for the following evening's parliamentary supper. 12 names surrounded the long table. A red cross had been drawn over Sebastian's chair. Beneath it, in unfamiliar handwriting, were 6 words: "The deaf girl has seen too much." Clara read the 6 words twice before handing the paper to Eliza. Her sister's eyes moved across the message. She touched her own chest and then pointed toward the ballroom. "They know I saw them." Clara examined the ivory fan. Their mother had given it to Eliza years ago, and until tonight it had never left her possession. Someone must have hidden the seating plan inside it while Eliza was dressing, or during the confusion after Sebastian ordered her removed. A knock sounded at the door. "Her Grace's carriage is waiting," called Mr. Pritchard, Sebastian's steward. Clara folded the paper into her glove. "We need to speak to the Duke." Pritchard entered, but remained close to the threshold. He had served Ravenscourt since before Sebastian inherited the title, yet he would not meet Clara's eyes. "His Grace has instructed me to escort you directly to the carriage. Tell him his life may be in danger." The steward's face tightened. "I have been ordered not to carry any further messages from you." Sebastian had not merely expelled her. He had severed every route through which she might challenge his judgment. Clara crossed the room, but 2 footmen blocked the corridor. Neither touched her, though their lowered heads made their orders clear. Eliza signed, "Do not fight them here. Watch instead." Clara forced herself to look past her anger. One of the footmen wore the ordinary green and gold Ravenscourt livery. The other wore the same coat, but its brass buttons were new and its sleeves too long. She had never seen him before. When the unfamiliar man lifted their trunk, his right glove slipped. A thin blue line had been tattooed around his wrist. Eliza gripped Clara's arm. She had seen the same mark beneath the black-gloved stranger's cuff. The man noticed their attention and pulled his glove back into place. Clara turned to Pritchard. "Who is he?" The steward glanced at the footman. "Mr. Croft sent additional servants from London for the parliamentary supper." Nathaniel Croft was Sebastian's newly appointed political secretary, the man who had persuaded him that Ravenscourt could become a meeting place for ministers, envoys, and ambitious noblemen. Clara had objected when Croft replaced 3 trusted servants without references. Sebastian had called her suspicious and provincial. Now one of Croft's men carried her luggage toward the carriage. Clara moved beside the trunk. "That contains my sister's medicines. I shall carry it myself." The false footman did not release the handle. For one brief moment, they stared at each other. Then Eliza stumbled deliberately against him. The trunk fell, its lid opened, and gowns spilled across the floor. As the man cursed, Eliza snatched a folded page from inside his coat. He seized her shoulder. Clara struck his hand away with the ivory handle of her parasol. "Touch her again," she said, "and every guest in that ballroom will hear me accuse you of assaulting a duke's sister by marriage." The man released Eliza. Pritchard ordered him to collect the fallen clothes, apparently more concerned with avoiding another scandal than questioning why a supposed servant had grabbed a young woman. Eliza concealed the stolen page beneath her cloak. Minutes later, the sisters were placed inside a closed carriage. Their luggage was strapped behind them, and the false footman climbed onto the rear step. Sebastian had assigned no maid and provided no destination beyond Belmere Cottage, an unoccupied house 5 miles from Ravenscourt. The carriage rolled into darkness. Clara waited until the lights of the estate disappeared before showing Eliza the seating plan again. "Did you see who placed this in your fan?" Eliza shook her head. Then she unfolded the page stolen from the man's pocket. It was a delivery receipt from a gunsmith in York for 12 small percussion pistols. The purchaser's name had been abbreviated as NC, and the weapons had supposedly been delivered to Ravenscourt 3 days earlier. Clara felt the carriage sway beneath her. 12 pistols. 12 names around the supper table, yet the red cross marked Sebastian alone. Eliza tapped the receipt and signed. The man in black gave orders with his hands. The servants watched him. But Sir Edmund watched Lady Helena. "Are you certain?" He was afraid of her. Clara remembered Helena collecting the household keys. By now, she possessed access to the medicine cupboard, the guest rooms, the cellars, and every service passage in the house. The carriage slowed unexpectedly. They had not traveled far enough to reach Belmere. Clara lifted the curtain. Instead of turning toward the cottage road, the driver was guiding the horses into the dense woods north of the estate. She struck the roof. "Driver, you have taken the wrong road." No one answered. Eliza leaned forward and studied the shifting silhouette beyond the glass. Her hands moved urgently. "That is not our coachman." The carriage stopped. The door opened, revealing the false footman with the blue mark around his wrist. He held a pistol in one hand. In the other, he carried Eliza's empty medicine bottle. "You should have left the fan on the floor," he said. The pistol remained aimed at Clara's chest. "Give me the paper from the fan," the man said, "and the receipt your sister stole." Clara kept her hands visible. "If you kill us, the Duke will know something happened. The Duke ordered you removed in front of 100 witnesses. By morning, your carriage will be found overturned in the river. Everyone will call it a tragedy caused by his wife's stubbornness." He had prepared not only their deaths, but the explanation for them. Eliza watched his mouth closely. Her face showed fear, but her hands rested quietly beneath her cloak. Clara recognized the stillness. Her sister was counting. The attacker leaned into the carriage. "The papers." Clara removed the folded seating plan from her glove. "You mean this?" His eyes followed it. She threw it past his shoulder, into the mud. He turned instinctively. Eliza moved at once. She kicked the carriage door into his arm, knocking the pistol aside. The weapon fired into the trees as Clara seized the medicine bottle and smashed it against his face. The horses reared. The attacker fell backward. but the false coachman whipped the team forward. Clara caught the doorframe before she was thrown from the carriage. Eliza dragged her inside as the vehicle raced blindly between the trees. The coachman did not intend to take them to Belmere. Ahead, moonlight flashed upon the river. "He means to overturn us," Clara said. Eliza pointed to the leather strap holding their trunk behind the carriage. One end ran through a brass catch beside the door. Clara understood. She pulled the release. The heavy trunk struck the road and dragged against the rear axle. The carriage lurched violently. One wheel slammed into a tree root and split. Wood cracked beneath them. Clara wrapped both arms around Eliza as the carriage rolled onto its side. Glass shattered. Her shoulder hit the wall, and darkness swallowed her for several seconds. When she opened her eyes, the compartment lay tilted. Eliza was beside her, conscious but bleeding from a cut above her brow. Outside, the coachman cursed as he struggled to calm the horses. Clara forced the broken door upward. Pain burned through her shoulder, but she pushed Eliza through the opening and followed her into the undergrowth. They ran without cloaks or luggage, guided only by Clara's knowledge of the estate. Ravenscourt's northern woods bordered the farm of Thomas Reed, a tenant whose wife Clara had helped during a dangerous childbirth 2 winters earlier. Behind them, the coachman shouted to the armed man. A shot struck a tree near Clara's head. Eliza could not hear it. She looked back only when Clara pulled her down. They crawled beneath a fallen oak and crossed a shallow stream to confuse their pursuers. Eliza's satin shoes tore against the stones, but she never slowed. A lantern appeared beyond the trees. Clara feared another attacker until she recognized the broad figure carrying it. "Your Grace?" Thomas Reed lowered his hunting gun. Good God! His wife, Margaret, hurried them inside the farmhouse. She cleaned Eliza's wound, while Thomas barred the doors. Clara placed the gunsmith's receipt and the seating plan on the kitchen table. "I need you to ride to Ravenscourt," she told him. "Find the Duke and place these directly in his hands." Thomas examined the red cross over Sebastian's name. "If someone inside the house planned this, they may control the gates. Then go through the eastern pasture. Old Matthew is on duty at the stable yard tonight. He will admit you." Margaret touched Clara's injured shoulder. "And if His Grace refuses to listen?" Clara looked at the paper threatening Eliza. "Then we warn the magistrate and every guest ourselves." Thomas left through the rear door. Clara watched his lantern disappear across the fields, feeling the first fragile thread of hope since leaving Ravenscourt. Eliza sat at the table and drew the gestures she had witnessed. Door, carriage, blood. Then she added another sign Clara had not understood in the ballroom. 2 fingers against the palm, followed by a closed fist. Clara frowned. "A debt?" Eliza nodded and pointed to the initials on the receipt. N.C. Nathaniel Croft. Before Clara could answer, hooves thundered outside. Thomas had been gone less than 20 minutes. Far too little time to reach Ravenscourt and return. The farmhouse door opened. Thomas stumbled inside, blood running from his temple. In his hand was an official order bearing Sebastian's seal. "They were waiting at the eastern gate," he gasped. "The Duke has accused you of stealing confidential papers and plotting violence against tomorrow's guests." Clara took the order. At the bottom, beneath instructions for her immediate arrest, appeared Sebastian's unmistakable signature. Clara held the arrest order close to the lamp. The seal was genuine. So was Sebastian's signature. She recognized the heavy downward stroke of the final letter. A mark formed after an old fencing injury stiffened his hand. But the accusation above it had been written by someone else. "He signed this," Thomas said. "Yes." But perhaps not after these words were added. It did not absolve him. Sebastian had repeatedly signed documents prepared by Nathaniel Croft without reading them, dismissing Clara's objections as interference. Whether the order had been altered or merely presented to him with a lie, his carelessness had supplied the weapon. Hooves sounded on the road. Margaret extinguished the lamp. Through a gap in the shutters, Clara saw 3 riders carrying Ravenscourt lanterns. "We cannot remain here," she said. Thomas opened a concealed hatch beneath the pantry floor. It led to an old drainage passage used during spring floods. Clara helped Eliza descend first, then followed while Thomas replaced the boards above them. The passage ended behind the barn. From there, the sisters crossed the fields toward St. Agnes School, a small institution Clara had founded for children who could not hear. Its headmistress, Miss Lydia Finch, knew Eliza's language and had no loyalty to Sebastian's political guests. They reached the school before dawn. Lydia admitted them through the kitchen and listened as Clara explained the fan, the pistols, and the attack in the woods. When Eliza described the black-gloved man's gestures, Lydia asked her to repeat each movement slowly. Door, carriage, blood, tomorrow. Then Eliza demonstrated the strange sign she had interpreted as debt. Lydia's expression changed. "That does not mean debt," she said. "Not in the dockworkers' cant." "What does it mean, exchange?" Clara spread the seating plan on the table. The conspirators were not simply planning to kill Sebastian. Something would be exchanged during the supper, something important enough to require 12 hidden weapons and the removal of the only witness who could understand their signals. Eliza tapped Sir Edmund's name on the plan. Then she pointed to his walking stick. Clara remembered how tightly the envoy had held it. "What did you see?" she asked. Eliza signed that Sir Edmund had briefly loosened the silver handle. Inside the hollow cane had been a rolled document, bound with blue ribbon. When the gloved man signaled to Lady Helena, Helena touched the household keys at Clara's waist. The keys she now possessed. "The document must be kept somewhere inside Ravenscourt," Clara said. "Helena needed my keys to reach it." Lydia crossed to a locked cabinet and withdrew a ledger. 2 men visited the school last week. They claimed the Duke intended to withdraw your funding. They asked whether Eliza taught the older pupils a private language. Who sent them? One gave his name as Nathaniel Croft. Clara's anger sharpened into certainty. Croft had known Eliza could understand coded gestures before the ballroom confrontation. Her humiliation had not been accidental. He needed Sebastian to cast both sisters out, and Sebastian had obliged him. A carriage approached the school. This one displayed the magistrate's crest. Clara considered fleeing, then saw that the carriage carried only one passenger, Sir Edmund Carow. He entered pale and breathless, without his walking stick. "I have little time," he said. "Croft took a treaty from me last night. At tomorrow's supper, he intends to exchange it for a forged version committing British troops to a private military action overseas." Why not report him? Because he has letters proving I accepted money from his associates. I thought I was selling harmless information. Now he owns my silence. And Sebastian? Croft promised him a cabinet appointment if the supper succeeded. Your husband signed emergency security orders giving Croft control of Ravenscourt's servants, gates, and correspondence. Sebastian had been offered a choice. He had chosen ambition and handed the conspirators his entire household. Sir Edmund removed a small notebook from his coat. This contains the names of Croft's intermediaries. Take it to the Lord Chancellor. Before Clara could accept it, the kitchen window shattered. Sir Edmund staggered forward. A dart protruded from his neck. Eliza looked through the broken glass and saw a hand signaling from the trees. This time, she recognized the final order clearly. Burn the school. Smoke curled beneath the kitchen door. Clara caught Sir Edmund before he struck the floor. His pulse remained faint but steady. The dart had not killed him, at least not yet. "Lydia, how many children are sleeping upstairs?" 14. Clara thrust Croft's notebook into Eliza's hands. "Keep this beneath your dress. Do not surrender it to anyone." Then she ran into the corridor. Flames had already climbed the curtains in the front classroom. Someone had poured oil along the walls, cutting off the main staircase. Lydia rang the alarm bell, but several younger pupils could not hear it. Eliza seized a wooden ruler and struck the iron pipes running through the building. The vibrations traveled into the dormitories. Doors opened above them as frightened children appeared on the landing. Clara directed them toward the rear stairs, while Lydia dragged Sir Edmund away from the smoke. A burning beam fell across the corridor, separating 3 children from the others. Eliza crossed before Clara could stop her. She gathered the youngest child into her arms, guided the other 2 beneath the smoke, and kicked open a laundry room window. Clara caught them outside as flames burst through the ceiling. The last person emerged, just before the roof collapsed. Across the field, a mounted figure turned toward the woods. Eliza handed the rescued child to Lydia and ran after him. Clara followed, calling for her to stop. Eliza could not hear her, but she saw the rider glance back and recognized the blue band around his wrist. She lifted a stone and struck his horse's flank. The frightened animal reared. Its rider fell hard against the ground. Thomas Reed, arriving from the farm with several tenants, reached him before he could recover. They bound his hands and dragged him away from the burning school. The man was the false footman who had attacked the carriage. A search of his coat produced a purse of gold, a second blue-marked glove, and an unsigned letter ordering him to leave Clara's body in the river. There was also a list of payments bearing Nathaniel Croft's initials. But the gunsmith's receipt was gone. The captive smiled through the blood on his teeth. One unsigned letter proves nothing. By noon, the county will believe the Duchess burned this school to destroy evidence of her own treason. Clara knelt before him. "Who gave you the orders?" "You already know." "Croft?" His eyes shifted briefly toward Sir Edmund. It was enough. Clara rose and instructed Thomas to lock the man inside the stone dairy, away from the tenants gathering to fight the fire. She then returned to Sir Edmund, who had begun to convulse. Lydia examined the dart. "There is a bitter residue on the tip." Clara smelled it carefully. Aconite. The school kept no antidote, but Clara knew the estate's medicine cupboard contained charcoal powder and stimulants that might slow the poison's effects. The cupboard Helena could now unlock. "We must take him to Ravenscourt," Lydia said. "If we approach openly, Croft will arrest us before we cross the gate." Eliza touched Clara's arm and pointed toward the ruined eastern wall of the school. Behind the fallen plaster, an old service map hung beneath cracked glass. It showed a disused drainage tunnel connecting the former Abbey grounds to Ravenscourt's lower cellars. Clara had ordered it sealed 3 years earlier after a child became trapped inside. The outer entrance remained beneath the school's abandoned chapel. They placed Sir Edmund on a handcart and entered the tunnel with Lydia and Thomas. 2 tenants remained behind to guard the prisoner and the surviving evidence. The passage was narrow and wet. Halfway through, Eliza stopped. Fresh boot prints marked the mud. Someone had used the tunnel recently. At the Ravenscourt end, they found the iron barrier Clara had commissioned. Its lock had been cut, and crates lined the passage beyond it. Thomas opened one. Inside lay 12 percussion pistols wrapped in parliamentary documents. Another crate contained bottles of lamp oil, false Ravenscourt seals, and printed handbills accusing Sebastian of conspiring against the crown. Croft planned not merely to kill the Duke, but to leave evidence proving Sebastian had armed the assassins himself, and Sebastian's signatures appeared on the shipping papers. Clara heard footsteps approaching from the cellar. She motioned for everyone to hide behind the crates. 2 voices entered the tunnel. Nathaniel Croft spoke first. "The school is burning. The girl and the Duchess will be blamed." Lady Helena answered him. "And Sebastian? He will sign the final order at breakfast. Once he does, the Duke will have condemned himself." Clara pressed one hand over Sir Edmund's mouth as Croft and Helena passed within a few feet of the crates. "The Duke is beginning to question the security orders," Helena said. "He is questioning them because his wife taught him to doubt me. His wife is supposed to be dead. She will be soon. Until then, keep Sebastian angry. Remind him that Clara embarrassed him before his guests and stole government papers." Their footsteps faded toward the cellar stairs. Clara looked at Eliza. Her sister had followed the exchange by watching their shadows and catching fragments of their lips whenever they turned. "Helena will bring Sebastian here at breakfast," Eliza signed. "Croft wants him to see the weapons. To convince him I placed them," Clara realized. Croft would then ask Sebastian to sign the final order authorizing arrests, or perhaps armed intervention. Once the Duke's signature appeared beside the hidden weapons and forged treaty, the Crown would see him as the conspiracy's leader. Sir Edmund shuddered violently. They could not wait. Thomas remained with him, while Clara, Eliza, and Lydia entered the lower cellar. The servants' corridors were strangely empty. Croft had replaced the night staff with his own men and confined the older servants to their quarters. Clara led the others through a concealed passage behind the wine racks. She had discovered it years ago while overseeing repairs, and Croft did not know it existed. They emerged beside the medicine room. The lock showed fresh scratches, but Helena had not yet removed its contents. Clara found charcoal powder, mustard stimulant, and clean water. Lydia returned to Sir Edmund while Clara searched the shelves. One bottle was missing, concentrated aconite tincture. In its place stood Eliza's empty medicine bottle. "They meant to claim she poisoned him," Clara whispered. Eliza examined the shelf and pointed to a faint streak of red wax. It matched the wax on Sir Edmund's stolen treaty case. Helena had opened both with Clara's household key and left traces behind. Clara wrapped the bottle in linen. It connected Helena's access to the poison, but it was not enough. They still needed the treaty and a witness who could survive to identify Croft. A door opened at the end of the passage. Sebastian entered with 2 guards. For one terrible instant, relief crossed his face at the sight of Clara alive. Then he saw the medicine bottle in her hand, and suspicion replaced it. "Croft said you would return for that." "Because Croft placed it here. You fled an arrest order, attacked my servants, and entered Ravenscourt through a sealed tunnel. Your servants tried to murder us." Sebastian looked at Eliza's wounded brow and Clara's torn gown. His certainty faltered, but Helena appeared behind him carrying the gunsmith's receipt that had vanished after the carriage attack. "This was found among her Grace's belongings," she said. Clara stared at the paper. "Your man stole that from us." Helena's expression remained wounded and composed. "Then why does it bear your sister's name?" She turned the receipt toward Sebastian. The purchaser's line no longer read NC. It now displayed Eliza Bell's name in careful ink. Eliza signed furiously, but Sebastian did not understand her. He looked away instead of asking Clara to translate. That choice cut more deeply than his accusation. "Search them," he ordered. One guard reached for Eliza. Clara stepped between them. "Before you touch her, ask Croft why 12 pistols were hidden beneath your house. Ask Helena why she took my keys. Ask yourself why the carriage you provided was driven toward the river. I provided a carriage to Belmere. You never checked who drove it." Sebastian's face hardened at the truth beneath her words. Nathaniel Croft entered from the cellar. "Your Grace, the parliamentary guests are already arriving. We cannot permit a domestic disturbance to endanger the crown's business." Clara held Sebastian's gaze. "If you arrest us now, you are giving him exactly what he wants." Sebastian had a choice. He could delay the supper, question his servants, or inspect the evidence without Croft beside him. Instead, he surrendered to wounded pride. "Confine my wife in the east apartments," he ordered. "Lock Eliza in the old nursery." The guards seized Clara, but Eliza twisted free, slipped through the medicine room door, and vanished into the servants' passage. She still carried Croft's notebook beneath her dress. Croft drew a pistol. "Stop her!" Sebastian caught his wrist. "You will not shoot a girl in my house." For the first time, he looked directly at Croft's weapon. Around the man's exposed wrist ran a thin blue line. Sebastian's face changed. Then every bell in Ravenscourt began to ring at once. Eliza was warning the entire house. The bells shattered Ravenscourt's orderly silence. Guests poured from their chambers, while servants abandoned their posts. Croft's hired men hesitated, uncertain whether the alarm signaled fire, intrusion, or discovery. Sebastian released Croft's wrist. "Why do you bear the same mark as the man who attacked my wife's carriage?" Croft concealed the tattoo beneath his cuff. "A naval mark from my youth, nothing more. You told me you had never served." Before Croft could answer, Thomas emerged from the cellar with Lydia and the unconscious Sir Edmund. Sebastian stared at the poisoned envoy. "What happened to him?" "Ask Lady Helena," Clara said. She had access to the aconite. Helena stepped backward, but Sebastian turned toward her. "The household keys. I left them upstairs. You carried them into the cellar less than an hour ago." Helena's composure cracked. Croft raised his pistol. "This discussion is over." The two Ravenscourt guards moved toward him, but several armed servants appeared on the stairs. Each wore a blue line around his wrist. Croft had placed his own men throughout the house. "Escort the Duke and Duchess to the east apartments," he ordered. "Tell the guests an assassin has entered Ravenscourt." "You have no authority here," Sebastian said. Croft smiled. "You gave it to me in writing." He produced one of the emergency orders Sebastian had signed. It granted Croft control over the estate's security until the parliamentary delegation departed. Sebastian read his own signature in silence. His ambition had made him a prisoner in his own house. Clara and Sebastian were taken upstairs together. The guards locked them inside the east sitting room, while Lydia and Thomas were forced to remain with Sir Edmund below. Eliza had disappeared into the hidden passages. Sebastian crossed to the window. "There are armed men at every gate. I warned you. I know. No. You know Croft deceived you. That is not the same as understanding what you did." He faced her. Clara continued before remorse could become an excuse. "You humiliated a defenseless girl because her presence embarrassed you. You dismissed my judgment because Croft flattered your ambition. You signed orders without reading them and handed Helena the authority you took from me." Sebastian lowered his eyes. "I believed you wanted to control me. I wanted you to behave like a man responsible for other people's lives." The words struck harder than anger. A faint tapping came from behind the wall. Clara recognized the rhythm Eliza used at St. Agnes to summon children during lessons. She removed a panel beside the fireplace and found her sister crouched inside the passage. Eliza handed over Croft's notebook. It contained dates, payments, and the names of the men stationed throughout Ravenscourt. One entry recorded money transferred to Helena's brother in exchange for her assistance. Another showed Croft purchasing copies of Sebastian's private correspondence. The final page outlined the supper. At 9 o'clock, the genuine treaty would be exchanged for the forged one. At 9:15, concealed pistols would be distributed. At 9:30, Sebastian would be killed, while Croft's men arrested the surviving guests in the Duke's name. Clara checked the clock. It was already 8:40. Sebastian reached for the notebook. Clara closed it. You no longer decide what happens to this evidence. Pain crossed his face, but he nodded. What do you need? For once, obedience. Eliza led them through the passage toward the musicians' gallery overlooking the dining hall. From there, Clara could expose Croft before every guest, but only if Sir Edmund survived long enough to identify the genuine treaty. As they approached the gallery, Eliza stopped. Through a narrow opening, she saw Helena below speaking silently to Croft with her hands. Eliza translated the gestures for Clara. The envoy is still alive. Croft answered, then kill him before 9. Clara checked the clock again. 17 minutes remain before the treaty exchange. We separate, she said. Sebastian, find Sir Edmund and keep him alive. Eliza and I will recover the genuine treaty. I will not leave you unprotected. You already placed armed men throughout this house. Your protection is precisely what trapped us. Sebastian absorbed the rebuke without arguing. Clara turned to Eliza. Did you see where Helena went after speaking with Croft? Eliza pointed toward the west wing, then signed blue room and key. Helena had used one of Clara's household keys to enter the blue guest chamber. The room belonged to Sir Edmund. Sebastian removed his signet ring and offered it to Clara. The loyal servants may still obey this. She closed his fingers around it. I do not need your symbol. I need you to tell them publicly that I spoke the truth. A shout rose from below. Croft's men were searching the passages. Sebastian moved toward the narrow stair leading to the servants' corridor. Before leaving, he looked at Eliza and slowly formed one of the few signs he remembered. Forgive me. Eliza's expression did not soften. She answered with deliberate precision. Help first. Sebastian nodded and disappeared down the stairs. Clara and Eliza crossed the musicians' gallery above the dining hall. Below, 12 guests had been seated according to the plan found inside the broken fan. Croft stood at the head of the table, explaining that Sebastian had been delayed by a disturbance involving his unstable wife. Lady Helena entered carrying Sir Edmund's silver walking stick. Eliza touched Clara's arm and pointed. The handle was no longer aligned with the crest engraved on the shaft. Someone had opened it and closed it carelessly. The treaty was still inside. Helena placed the cane against the wall beside her chair. 2 blue-marked servants immediately positioned themselves nearby. Reaching it unnoticed would be impossible. Eliza looked toward the musicians' abandoned instruments. She lifted a small brass handbell and tied its clapper in place with a ribbon. Then she stepped behind the gallery curtain and lowered the silent bell on a cord. It descended slowly toward the dining hall. Clara understood. During lessons at St. Agnes, Eliza had taught the children to use reflected light and moving objects to communicate across distances. Sound was not necessary. The polished bell caught the candlelight. It swung once toward the eastern door, twice toward the cane, and once toward the gallery. Below, Lydia Finch entered with a tray of wine. She glanced upward, saw the bell, and followed its movements. Lydia stumbled deliberately beside Helena. Wine spilled across the table. Guests rose in irritation, while Helena recoiled from the stain on her gown. In the confusion, Lydia kicked the walking stick beneath the table. Thomas Reed, disguised in a borrowed footman's coat, caught it with his boot and pushed it toward the service door. One of Croft's men noticed. He reached beneath his coat. Eliza swung the brass bell directly into the nearest chandelier. Crystal prisms crashed onto the table. Candles went out, plunging half the room into darkness. Thomas seized the cane and vanished. Clara and Eliza hurried through the passage to meet him in the old library. Lydia joined them moments later. Thomas twisted the silver handle and withdrew a narrow roll of parchment bound with blue ribbon. Sir Edmund's seal remained intact. The genuine treaty, Clara said. But possessing it would not be enough. Croft could accuse her of stealing it, just as he had accused Eliza. They needed Sir Edmund alive. A concealed door opened. Sebastian entered, carrying the envoy with the help of Mr. Pritchard. Sir Edmund's face was gray, but Lydia's treatment had steadied his pulse. "I found Pritchard locked in the linen room," Sebastian said. "Croft confined every servant who questioned his orders." Pritchard lowered Sir Edmund onto a sofa. "More than 30 loyal servants are waiting in the north corridor, Your Grace." Sebastian looked at Clara. "They are waiting for the Duchess." For the first time that night, he acknowledged where the household's true loyalty rested. Clara knelt beside Sir Edmund. "Can you hear me?" His eyelids moved. She held the treaty near his hand. "We recovered it, but Croft intends to present a forgery at 9. You must identify the original before the guests." Sir Edmund struggled to speak. "Seal inside." Clara examined the blue ribbon. Beneath the visible wax seal was a second impression hidden inside the folded parchment, a safeguard known only to the envoy and the minister who issued it. That secret could authenticate the document publicly. Sir Edmund gripped her wrist. "Croft, not serving foreign power. Then who hired him? Investors, war contracts, ships, weapons, land. The conspiracy was driven not by loyalty to another nation, but by profit. Croft and his associates intended to manufacture a diplomatic crisis, then earn fortunes supplying the military response." Sebastian turned away. Croft had appealed to his desire for influence, promising him a place in government while using his estate, his signatures, and his reputation to construct the crime. A clock chimed the quarter hour. 9 o'clock. From the dining hall came Croft's voice. "Gentlemen, before His Grace joins us, I must present a document proving that the Duke of Ravenscourt has authorized immediate military action. He has begun," Clara said. Sebastian reached for the library door. "Wait," Clara faced him. "If you enter as Duke and order Croft arrested, his men will shoot. The guests still believe your signature makes him legitimate. What do you propose?" "You will enter alone and confess every order you signed." Sebastian understood the cost. He would publicly admit negligence, surrender the appointment he desired, and expose himself to investigation by the Crown. "And while they look at me?" he asked. "Eliza will direct the servants. I will present the evidence." He looked at his wife for a long moment. Then, "Let the truth cost me what it should." Sebastian entered the dining hall through the main doors. Croft stopped reading. Every guest rose as the Duke walked toward the table without guards, weapons, or insignia of office. "The document Mr. Croft holds bears my signature," Sebastian said, "but before any man acts upon it, you will hear how carelessly that signature was given, and how willingly I condemned the woman who tried to warn me." Helena's face drained of color. From the gallery, Eliza began signaling to the loyal servants stationed behind the doors. Croft saw her. His hand flashed 3 rapid commands to the blue-marked men. The dining room doors slammed shut. 12 pistols appeared from beneath 12 servants' coats, and every barrel turned toward Clara as she stepped into the room holding the genuine treaty. Clara did not raise her hands. 12 pistols, she said, looking from one armed servant to the next, purchased by Nathaniel Croft and hidden beneath Ravenscourt. If you fire them, every witness in this room will know who commands you. Croft unfolded the document before him. The weapons were purchased under Eliza Bell's name. The Duke's own orders authorized their delivery. And who wrote her name on the receipt? Clara asked. A girl who has never placed an order, signed a bank draft, or entered a gunsmith shop. A few guests exchanged uneasy glances. Croft gestured toward the genuine treaty in Clara's hands. Seize her. The blue-marked men advanced. From the gallery, Eliza raised both hands. Across the dining hall, ordinary Ravenscourt servants responded. Footmen stepped away from the walls. Kitchen maids emerged from the service doors carrying iron pokers. Stable hands appeared behind the armed men with ropes and hunting staffs. Croft's servants had pistols, but they were outnumbered 3 to 1. "Shoot the Duchess," Croft ordered. One man cocked his weapon. Eliza saw the movement before Clara did. She signaled sharply toward the chandelier rope. Thomas cut it. The chandelier dropped onto the center of the table, scattering silver, glass, and burning candles. Guests threw themselves aside. The gunman fired, but his shot struck the ceiling. Clara shielded the treaty beneath her body, while loyal servants overwhelmed 2 of Croft's men. Sebastian overturned the banquet table, creating a barrier between the guests and the remaining pistols. "Lay down your weapons," he shouted. "Croft has no lawful authority. Every order he carries was granted by me, and I revoke it before these witnesses." Croft laughed. "You cannot revoke the evidence of your own treason." He raised the forged treaty. "It bears the Duke's seal and commits his private forces to an unauthorized campaign. By dawn, the Crown will receive copies." Clara rose behind the overturned table. "Then let the guests compare your forgery with the original." She broke the blue ribbon and opened Sir Edmund's treaty. On the outer page appeared the visible royal seal. Inside the final fold lay the second impression Sir Edmund had described, a small crown crossed by an olive branch. Croft's document contained no hidden seal. Lord Whitcomb, the senior parliamentary guest, stepped forward. "The inner mark is used on restricted diplomatic instruments. I have seen it before. So have I." Sir Edmund Carow stood in the doorway, supported by Lydia and Mr. Pritchard. His face remained pale, but his voice carried through the hall. "The document held by the Duchess is genuine. Mr. Croft stole it from my walking stick and attempted to murder me with aconite." Helena moved quietly toward the west door. Eliza pointed at her. Lydia held up the empty medicine bottle. This was placed in the estate cupboard to implicate Miss Bell. Red wax from the stolen treaty case was found beside it. Clara opened Croft's notebook. She read the payment dates, the names of his hired men, the purchase of the weapons, and the sums promised to investors who expected to profit from a manufactured military crisis. Each entry corresponded to a receipt, a shipment, or a man standing armed inside the room. Croft's control began to break. One of his servants lowered his pistol, then another. "Cowards," Croft hissed. Helena reached the door, but Sebastian blocked her path. "You took Clara's keys. You gave them to me," Helena replied. The truth silenced him. He had not known how Helena would use them, but he had publicly allowed her to collect the symbols of his wife's authority. Without that choice, Helena could not have entered the medicine room, opened Sir Edmund's chamber, or used the service passages freely. Sebastian stepped aside, not to release her, but to allow 2 loyal servants to take her into custody. "I did give them to you," he said, "and I will testify to it." Helena's face hardened. "Then testify that Croft forced me." Croft turned on her. "You proposed removing the girl. You planted the seating plan in her fan." The accusation revealed more than either intended. Clara looked toward the assembled guests. "You have now heard them identify each other." Croft realized his mistake. He seized a pistol from the nearest servant and aimed it at Clara. Sebastian moved between them. The shot struck him beneath the shoulder and spun him against the table. Clara caught him as he fell, but her eyes remained on Croft. She would not permit his injury to turn Sebastian into the hero of a disaster he had helped create. Eliza descended from the gallery. Croft gave his remaining men a rapid series of hand commands, believing no one else understood them. Eliza translated aloud through Lydia. He ordered 1 man to bar the north door, 2 to take hostages, and another to burn the documents. Every conspirator froze. The language they had used to conceal their crimes had become evidence against them. Thomas and the stable hands rushed the gunmen. Lord Whitcomb kicked the burning papers away from the hearth. Pritchard locked the doors, while Clara carried the notebook and both treaties beyond Croft's reach. Croft backed toward the terrace, holding his pistol to Sir Edmund's throat. "Open the doors," he demanded, "or the envoy dies." Eliza watched his free hand. His fingers moved once at his side, a silent order directed toward Helena. Clara saw Eliza's warning too late. Helena pulled a small pistol from beneath her skirt and fired at the terrace window. Glass exploded outward. Croft dragged Sir Edmund through the opening, while Helena ran after them. Beyond the terrace waited a saddled horse and a carriage bearing forged royal insignia. They were not fleeing randomly. The road from Ravenscourt led directly to the royal courier station, where copies of the false treaty could still be dispatched under Sebastian's name. Clara placed pressure against her husband's wound and looked at him. "Go," Sebastian said. "Finish what I refuse to see." Clara rose, handed his care to Lydia, and followed Eliza and Thomas through the shattered window. Ahead, Croft's carriage disappeared toward the courier road, carrying Sir Edmund and the forged order that could still turn Sebastian's crimes of vanity into an act of treason. Clara, Eliza, and Thomas reached the stables as Croft's carriage passed through the northern gate. 3 horses remained saddled. Clara mounted despite the pain in her shoulder, secured the genuine treaty beneath her coat, and followed the carriage onto the courier road. Croft had speed, but Clara knew the estate better than any man he had hired. She led the others across the mill field and through a narrow bridle path that cut nearly a mile from the journey. They reached the royal courier station moments before the carriage. Clara dismounted beside the locked dispatch box. 2 clerks emerged as Croft's carriage entered the yard. Croft stepped down with his pistol pressed against Sir Edmund's ribs. Helena followed, carrying the forged order. "By authority of the Duke of Ravenscourt," Croft announced, "this dispatch must leave immediately." The senior clerk reached for it. Eliza saw Helena's free hand move behind the folds of her gown. 2 fingers pointed toward Clara. One closed fist ordered the coachman to shoot. Eliza gave a sharp warning. Thomas knocked the coachman's weapon aside as it fired. The ball struck the dispatch box. Clara ran toward Helena, caught her wrist, and forced the forged order into the mud. Croft dragged Sir Edmund backward. "1 step closer and he dies." Clara stopped. "You cannot send the forgery now," she said. "The clerks have seen you use an envoy as a shield. I need only reach the coast. You will not." Lanterns appeared along the road. The Ravenscourt tenants were arriving, farmers, stable hands, and labourers who had seen St. Agnes burning and answered Thomas's call. Behind them rode Lord Whitcomb with several parliamentary guests and the county magistrate. Croft turned his pistol toward Clara. Eliza stepped between them. For the first time, Croft looked directly at the girl he had dismissed as voiceless. Eliza raised her hands and repeated the secret commands she had witnessed in the ballroom: the exchange of the treaty, the planned assassination, and the order to burn the school. Lydia, arriving with the magistrate, translated every gesture aloud. Sir Edmund drove his elbow into Croft's injured side. The pistol discharged harmlessly into the earth. Thomas seized Croft while two tenants pulled the envoy free. Helena attempted to run, but the courier clerks blocked the gate. Clara lifted the forged order from the mud and placed it beside the genuine treaty. Before the magistrate and parliamentary witnesses, Sir Edmund identified the hidden royal seal. Clara then produced Croft's notebook, the aconite bottle, the altered gunsmith's receipt, and the letter ordering her murder. The evidence formed a single, unbroken chain. Croft had recruited former smugglers marked by blue wrist tattoos and placed them inside Ravenscourt as servants. Helena had obtained Clara's keys after Sebastian publicly stripped her of authority. Those keys gave the conspirators access to Sir Edmund's room, the medicine cupboard, and the estate passages. They stole the genuine treaty and prepared a forged version bearing Sebastian's signature. Croft planned to kill the Duke during the supper, arm the assassins with weapons delivered under Sebastian's authority, and distribute false evidence portraying Ravenscourt as the center of a treasonous military plot. The resulting crisis would enrich Croft's investors through shipping, weapons, and supply contracts. Eliza had been targeted because she alone understood the conspirators' hand signals. Clara had been targeted because she questioned Croft's appointments, controlled access to the estate, and possessed enough authority among the servants and tenants to stop him. Yet, the conspiracy had succeeded so far only because Sebastian enabled it. He had signed unread orders. He had surrendered control of his gates and correspondence. He had trusted Helena with Clara's keys, rejected his wife's warnings, and expelled the one witness who could expose the plot. Croft and Helena were taken into custody before sunrise. In the months that followed, Croft was convicted of attempted murder, forgery, kidnapping, and conspiracy against the crown. His financial records exposed 3 investors who had funded the scheme. Their contracts were seized, and they faced prosecution. Helena testified in exchange for avoiding the harshest sentence, but she lost her fortune repaying stolen funds and was permanently excluded from court. The armed accomplices received sentences according to their roles. The false footman's evidence connected the carriage attack and the burning of St. Agnes directly to Croft. Sir Edmund survived. He resigned his post and publicly admitted accepting money for confidential information. His testimony prevented a diplomatic crisis, but it did not erase his corruption. Sebastian also survived his wound. Before the parliamentary committee, he did not claim to have been deceived innocently. "I chose flattery over scrutiny," he testified. "I treated my wife's judgment as a challenge to my pride. I humiliated Miss Bell because communicating with her required patience I was unwilling to give. Every criminal in this affair exploited authority I freely placed in the wrong hands." He surrendered the government appointment Croft had promised him. The Crown placed Ravenscourt's political affairs under temporary supervision, and Sebastian paid for the rebuilding of St. Agnes from his personal inheritance rather than the estate accounts. He restored Clara's name publicly before the same guests who had witnessed her humiliation. He transferred Belmere Cottage and a substantial independent fund to trustees chosen by Clara, ensuring that neither he nor any future heir could control her home, the school, or Eliza's security. Only after completing those acts did he ask to speak with his wife privately. They met in the rebuilt hall of St. Agnes 6 months later. Sebastian carried no title insignia and made no request for forgiveness. "I loved the obedience I expected from you more than the truth you offered me," he said. "I cannot repair our marriage by asking you to trust another promise." "No," Clara replied, "you cannot." She chose a formal separation and remained at Belmere with Eliza. Whether Sebastian might one day become a man worthy of renewed trust was no longer Clara's duty to decide in advance. On the morning St. Agnes reopened, local officials assembled beside the new entrance. Sebastian stood among the guests rather than at the center. A silver bell hung above the doorway, the same bell he had once used to order Eliza removed from his ballroom. Clara placed the school's keys into Eliza's palm. Eliza did not ring the bell. She opened the doors herself.